Good afternoon, folks. You know, here we are again, out in nature. You can probably hear the cars in the distance. You know, we're snuggled in here, among the grass, the weeds, the trees. We're going to try and learn something in among all of this greenery this afternoon. You know, what is it that the Bandido feels like talking about today? You know, it's always up to the Bandido folks, isn't it? You know, he has his little stroll through nature, then he thinks to himself, well, we cannot just finish our stroll without a lesson right at the end of it. So out comes the little camcorder. And you know, I was thinking, as I was strolling up this little path, about logic. And I think that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about logic. I'm going to give you an example of how people's logic can fall out of their arses without them even knowing about it. This is what we're going to learn today. Let me give you the perfect example, because this is something that I have observed for many years. Every time the summer comes around here in Ireland and the weather gets a little bit better, you know, the last week or so, we've been around 20 to 25 degrees here in Ireland. It's a little cloudier today, but it's still warm. We're still in the 20 degrees Celsius range. And this happens every year, folks. There's always a good spell of weather here in Ireland. Now, let me educate you on the Bandido's biology. You know, I sweat like fuck. Not my fault. I didn't get to choose the genes that made me up. But what I do know is that I sweat a lot. And I can't do anything about this. This is why I wear tank tops a lot. And, as you can probably imagine, when the good weather comes in and we get up above 20 degrees, because remember, even at the best of times, around 10 degrees, 15 degrees, I will sweat quite easily. So whenever you bring me up above 20 degrees, and even in the last few days it's been around 24 degrees, you can only imagine what happens to the Bandido. He gets very sweaty. So naturally, what does the Bandido do? What do you think he does? When it gets really toasty, I sweat enough as it is. So when it gets even warmer, off comes the top. He takes the top off. Why does he do this? Because any top that I wear gets pretty damp pretty quickly from sweat. So I don't want walking around. When I'm out moving around, walking through town, I don't want to be walking saturated. And I'm only going to put the top on when I'm entering a building, entering a shop, etc., etc. So, it's been very warm here the last week. And when I've been out walking around town, what I've done is I've taken the tank top off. Taken the tank top off because within about 10 minutes of walking, I'm already starting to sweat. And the tank top's already getting sweaty. So to save any hassle, to save this entire fucking tank top getting drenched by the time 20 minutes passes of my, you know, little jaunt downtown, I take the top off. Let the skin get exposed to the natural sunlight, to the wind. It feels good. You know, it's not often here in Ireland you have the luxury of just walking around with minimal clothing. So this is what I do. And I walk through town. I walk around town. And I have no shirt on. Now, of course, what do you think happens when I do this? You get people it's like they can't believe what they're seeing. They're seeing someone on a warm day, 24 degrees. Lord Jesus, they're seeing someone on a warm day, not wearing a top. Well, fancy that, folks. You wouldn't believe it, would you? And you see, That in itself is a fucking logic fail.
Why is he not wearing a top? Who does he think he is? Arrogant and self-indulgent, walking around with no top.
No, I mean, it's actually a lot simpler than that. Sheila, how are you keeping? You don't want to appear in the YouTube video, do you? Not today. Here, enjoy your afternoon, Sheila. And you know, you go downtown, as I was saying, and I mean, you get all of these individuals. In and of itself, to a degree, it is a logic fail. Because it's quite simple. It's warm. I sweat. I don't want my top saturated. I take top off while I'm walking. Because you know, when you walk, that is a form of exercise. When you exercise in warm weather, some people get pretty sweaty. I'm one of those people. So off comes the top. So I mean, it shouldn't be a big deal, really. But then what happens? They all start whispering. And you know, it gets better, folks, really. Let me tell you why it gets better. Because you see these people who are whispering and saying, who does he think he is? And walking around there with top on. Oh, incidentally, folks, you see the people who have the biggest problem with me not wearing a top. I'm just going to use my basic pattern recognition. We all have eyes. We can all recognize patterns, as I'm sure you know. And here's what I have recognized, the pattern that I have identified. The people who appear to have the biggest problem with me not wearing a shirt. They are grossly overweight, flabby, wrinkly, ugly mingers. I mean, it's just, I'm not saying that there can't be other people who have a problem with this, but it's just in my experience, it's the mingers who tend to have a problem with what it is I'm doing. So, this is where it gets better though, folks. Because you see the mingers who have a problem with this, apparently. If I were out in Spain, let's pick Spain, because you know, here in Ireland, people love to go to Spain for their holidays. They love to go to the beach, they love to walk around Spain in the summertime for a week or two. Now here's the funny thing. If I were to give these mingers that are here in Ireland that seem to have a problem with people walking around with no shirt on, when the weather is warm, may I add, if I were to give these mingers a plane ticket and bring them out to Spain, all-inclusive holiday to keep them happy, if these exact same people were to see me out in Spain walking around the streets without a shirt on, these people wouldn't bat an eyelid. They wouldn't bat an eyelid. They wouldn't even be paying attention. Why? Well, you see, the reason why they wouldn't be paying attention if they saw me, the exact same person, walking in Spain through some little pueblo in Spain. If they saw me walking through some little town in Spain without a shirt on, the reason why they wouldn't have a problem with it then is because it is culturally and, you know, according to society appropriate to take your shirt off when you're in Spain on vacation. It's fine to do it in Spain when you're on your holidays. No problem. You're allowed to take your shirt off then. So as long as you've booked a plane ticket and you're traveling to Spain for your holidays, you are then allowed to walk around without a shirt on. Because, of course, Spain during the summertime is warm, especially in the south of Spain, in Andalusia, where most people go to for their holidays. So, you know, if I'm in Spain, in Andalusia, for 2 weeks for my vacation, and I'm walking around every day without a shirt on, nobody cares, because it is culturally appropriate. It is accepted as a normal thing to do. When an Irish person goes to Spain and they walk around without a shirt on, no problem. Because everybody acknowledges, yeah, you know, Spain is warm. Spain's warm, you know, why would you be worrying if your skin can tolerate it? Or perhaps if you wear sunscreen, you know, it makes sense, it's warm. If people sweat a lot, they don't want their clothes to be drenched in sweat, walking around with damp clothes. Nobody would want that. So, you know, if your skin can tolerate it, or if you've got sunscreen on, fine, no problem. Everybody accepts it. It's a perfectly fine thing to do. As long as you put your shirt on when you go into the shops, nobody has a problem. But when you do it here in Ireland, all of a sudden, the same people, the mingers, they're now looking and going, and you know, they stare at you. Do you ever notice that, folks? You should actually try this sometime. See, whenever it's a good day, if you're ever in Ireland, or if you're watching this and you are based in Ireland and you live here, for the sheer amusement of it, you should go out, walk through town on a sunny day with no shirt on, and just watch people. Watch what they do. You know. And you know, as you're turning the corner of the street, they literally go, what is this? Well, this is what I call someone's logic falling out of their arse. That's what I call it. And you know, do the police agree with me? I mean, here they come in their helicopter. This is probably going to be extremely loud. Now, the Bandido has a fork in the road here. Should he keep talking and plough on? Or should he take a little break? Because we don't like to edit our videos, folks. I think it's going to pass on. I think we'll horse on. But you know, this is what it is. It's a complete and utter failure of one's logic. Because everyone has no problem with me not wearing a shirt, walking around all these little streets in Spain. Everyone thinks it's perfectly normal because I'm on vacation, I'm in Spain, Spain is warm. When it's warm, some people sweat more, some people have skin that's more tolerant to the sun, and so it's perfectly acceptable out in Spain to walk around without a shirt on. But when you do it here, everybody has a problem. Why? You see, that's the thing. If you were to cross-examine the mingers who have a problem with you not wearing a shirt, and you actually tried to dig down into their logic, what you will find is there is no logic to dig into. So here you are with your shovel, and you know, you're ready to dig into their logic, and then you realize, fuck, there is no logic to dig into here. I had a discussion with someone recently about this topic, and they initially were going, oh, well, you know, it's... And I said, well, is it illegal? Is it against the law for me to walk around town without a shirt on? I've got shorts on, I've got shoes on, I'm not exposing myself in any indecent way. Is it against the law? Well, you know, no, it's not against the law, but, and they start saying, but, and I'm like, but what? Well, you know, it makes some people uncomfortable. It makes some people uncomfortable. So what am I supposed to do in this life? Am I supposed to take every single person's feelings in this life into consideration before I make a decision? I mean, if people have a problem with me not wearing a shirt, they don't have to look at me. This is what I do all the time. Let me give you a comparable example. Do you think I like looking at morbidly obese people walking around town with little shirts on them, with their flab hanging off their arms, and their belly protruding, and their hips going out this way? Do you think I like to look at this? Do you think that's a beautiful sight to behold? Do you think that's an attractive thing? No, it isn't. So what do? I don't just, you know, stir and follow the person's, you know, movements right the way up the street. No, that's not what I do. If I have a problem with that, I just don't look, which is normally what I do. I don't bother. I just see it and I say, fine, their decision. If they want to carry all of that around with them, no problem. It ain't my body. So what do? I don't look. So whenever I see grossly misshapen, deformed people, like that's what it is. It's just, they are deformed in many ways. I'm not saying they're bad people, but they're really out of shape. And I don't like to look at that. I don't think it's very pleasant to look at. When you see a very overweight person, it's kind of repulsive. Just physically. I'm just talking about it strictly physically. It's a repulsive sight. It's the absolute opposite of what we would call beautiful. It's ugly. Okay, well, do you see me going around, staring at overweight fat people? Trying to shame them for the condition that they're in? No. Even though I don't like how they look, it doesn't look good, I don't stare at them. And I sure as fuck don't try to, almost intimidate them into feeling some sort of a strange feeling about their physical conditioning. So I say to this person, I'm like, right, well, if I don't like how someone looks, I just don't look at them. And then they said, well, it's just, people can be uncomfortable. They repeat that again, and I'm saying, well, if they're uncomfortable, that's a problem for them to deal with. I mean, what am I supposed to do? And this is where we get to the lesson, folks, in this show. What am I supposed to do is the question I asked this person. And the person says, well, I don't know. Let me tell you what I'm supposed to do. Precisely nothing. Folks, the lesson here is, there are going to be a whole bunch of people in this life who allow their logic to fall out of their arse. They have no logic. It makes no sense what they're saying. They cannot defend their position. So, the reason why I say I am going to do precisely zero is because why would I give these people such power and influence over my decision making and behaviour? Why would I do this? Why would I allow these people to strong arm me into behaving in a way that satisfies them and takes something away from my life? Because folks, when the weather gets good, not only do I sweat a lot, and I've already explained the problem with that. I don't want walking around with a damp shirt all day. Not only do I sweat a lot, but I like to have the sun strike parts of my body that don't normally get struck by sunlight. So that's a decision I want. That's a decision. That's almost, you could say, a health decision. I want as much of my skin within the framework of the law to get exposed to the sun. Because it makes my body feel good. It also makes me look better. Nothing wrong with that. So this is something I want to do because it benefits me, and it is not imposing my will on anybody else. I'm not saying that everybody else has to walk around without a shirt on. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying anybody has to look at me when I walk without a shirt on. People are free to look the other way. People are free to clothe up. Fucking put their scarf on whenever it's 24 degrees. I couldn't give a fuck. Why though? You have to ask yourself the question though. Why would you allow other people, in this sense, strangers, effectively, just strangers, to allow them to dictate what it is that you're going to do in your own existence when it's perfectly fine and reasonable? Effectively what you're doing is, you're giving them a whole bunch of power and influence over your existence. And that's what the lesson here is, folks, as we're trying to figure out how to deal with people who have logic fields, who have no logic in the first place. Because we don't want to effectively bend and, effectively mold our existence in such a way so that we're pleasing other people while we are losing out. That now means you are dependent on what other people think of you. Strangers, mingers, as we've talked about. Why, let me put it this way, folks. Fucking flies everywhere. I know I'm in good shape. I'm not an idiot. I can see recordings of myself. I can go and look in the mirror. I know I'm in good shape. So why would I let a fat, ugly minger dictate the terms on which I'm going to live my life? Yeah, I can see why they would not want to be walking around with minimal clothing on. They look disgusting. I mean, that may sound harsh, but folks, let's not kid ourselves. If someone is grossly overweight, obese, it doesn't look good. You're not going to want to see a whole bunch of that body exposed in public, really. It just doesn't look good. So then we need to ask ourselves, why would we do things? Why would we do things for these people, these strangers, who do not know who we are? They do not know what our goals and objectives are in this life. We have no relationship with these people whatsoever. Why would we give these people such power and influence over what we are going to do in our lives? Why would we allow these people, who mean precisely zero to us, why would we allow these people to dictate the terms of our own existence? That would be a logic fail from us. And that is the point, folks. What you don't want to do here is you don't want to allow other people's lack of logic to allow you to fall into exactly the same trap. Because, for example, if I were to walk down the town and I see some people, staring at me, and let's say, I feel really, self-conscious and embarrassed. Embarrassed about what? I'm in good fucking shape. What's there to be embarrassed about? I'm not embarrassed by my physique. I've no problem taking my shirt off. No big deal. So what am I going to do? Go to my bag. Oh, put the shirt back on again. Oh, stranger. Minger stranger, I hope you're happy now. Are you happy that I've put my shirt back on? For your own satisfaction? Now I get to lose out in life. I get to sweat like fuck with this shirt on. And then I get to, lose out on having parts of, my body that don't normally get exposed to the sun. Yeah, I get to lose out on that too. For your satisfaction. And so that your feelings aren't affected. So that you're not uncomfortable. Whose life are you living? Are you living your own life? Or are you living the life that someone else wants you to live? Because that's what you're doing. If I were to bend the knee and go and put my shirt on because some fat minger wants me to do it, am I living independently? Have I got autonomy over my own decision making? Over my own life? No. I'm too preoccupied about what these fucking strangers are saying. These meaningless people. They have no meaning in my life. I'm not saying they're bad people at all, but they have no meaning in my life. They are a stranger. I may never see them again. And that is the key point here. What will often happen is people who have no logic, people whose logic has fallen out of their arse, they will start to impose their lack of logic onto other people. And then this causes other people to adopt similar forms of fucking lack of logic. Me putting my shirt on is a lack of logic. I'm not doing anything wrong. But I'm allowing these people to literally dictate what it is that I'm doing right now on this particular day. That would be a lack of logic from me because I know there's no problem with what I'm doing. But you see, these people, in their little heads, they think it's fine to not wear a shirt in Spain, but they think it's somehow problematic when you engage in the exact same behaviour, pretty much with the exact same weather, only we're going to change it from Spain to Ireland. So when you're in Ireland and it's 24 degrees, you can't do this, according to some people. It makes some people uncomfortable. But when you do the exact same thing in Spain and it's 24 degrees, it's perfectly fine. It's a complete lack of logic. So if I were to bend to the will of these other people, that would be a similar lack of logic from me. And you know what the laugh is? I lose out. I lose out for the benefit of some fucking stranger. That is your lesson today, folks. Don't allow other people's lack of logic, and you will come across quite a bit of it. This is just a basic example that I'm giving you from personal experience. Do not allow other people's lack of logic to force you into engaging in similarly illogical behavior, or to take similarly illogical decisions. Make sure you are living life on your own terms. I'm not saying you should be doing anything illegal. I'm not saying you should be breaking the law. I'm not saying you should be going out of your way to make people uncomfortable, getting up in their faces and trying to, impose your will on them. Absolutely not. I'm not doing any of that. All I'm doing is I'm walking without a shirt on. I'm not bothering anybody. I'm not even looking at anyone. I'm in my own world. I'm walking. I'm enjoying the good weather, enjoying the sunshine. I'm loving the fact that my back and my chest is getting struck by sunshine. It makes me feel great. And I can sweat away without any problem. Don't allow people to forge your own path in this life, to dictate the terms of your own life. And once you start to realize, once you start to identify illogical behaviors from people, illogical conclusions, you then start to realize, you know what? Let's run the downward arrow. What's the worst case scenario? If I walk through town in this case without a shirt on, what's going to happen? That's right, absolutely nothing. Nothing. Nothing's going to happen. They can stir all they want. What are they going to do? Ring the police? Well, the police are going to come and say, Mr. Bandido, you're not allowed to wear a shirt. Oh, really? Well, show me the law that says that. It doesn't exist. So, it literally, folks, is all in your head. If you can realize that people are always going to come and fucking spoon their lack of logic your direction, you just need to be able to identify it. And once you identify it, you'll be able to continue living life on your own terms.